Welcome traders to another edition of Sunday Scoop. My name is PSK. Today is Sunday, February 6th, 2022. Hope you're all having a great weekend. Real quick disclaimer, this video is for educational, informational purposes only. This is not any buy or sell recommendations. This is not advice. I'm just giving my opinion on the markets and some charts. So let's jump into it. Let's talk about the week ahead, what we got going on. Another big full week of earnings. We got some popular names from not only just on the bio healthcare side, but we got some growth names, some consumer names. You know, we got stuff like Peloton, Disney, AFRM, Twitter, Net, Zillow. We got TWLO, Uber, CVS, which has been a red hot chart. And then just some other kind of consumer names mixed in here. Some popular names mixed in with some growth names, mixed in with some value names. So busy week ahead, and one that's going to be really interesting to watch tomorrow is going to be Peloton. Some really bullish news out Friday that they are there's big companies in the talks of potentially buying them out. Amazon, Nike. That could draw more interest. You know, who knows, maybe Google, Apple, somebody else gets involved. If those names start getting floating around, could be a big takeout if they do. As far as the macro calendar for the week, Monday, Tuesday, kind of light, even into Wednesday. But Thursday is going to be a big day. We have not only the jobless claims, which the market really doesn't seem to care too much about. Those have been consistent. But we got CPI, right? That's the thing the market has cared about the most is CPI, inflation, month to month, year to year, where we're at. And that is what has been moving the markets more so than non-farm payroll. Even though non-farm payroll did get a reaction on Friday, it just kind of, the reason that's important, the non-farm payroll, is because if it's strong and employment is strong, it gives the Fed the backdrop to raise rates. So I had some people actually ask me like, hey, these non-farm payroll numbers were good. Why is the market pulling? Well, it's pulling because that means the Fed should raise rates because the economy is strong, the job market's strong. So the Fed should raise rates. They have the economic backdrop to do it. Versus say at the end of 2020, non-farm payroll numbers, the market would rip to the upside, but that meant because people were getting back to work. Much different scenario. As far as IPOs, no real new IPOs expected, a few lockup names. As far as just review on the last week, how some of the ETFs performed, energy was the leader to the upside. We had crude breaking out into the 90s, looks like it's heading towards 100. Energy names, oil, gas names continuing their trend to the upside. Semis actually had a good week, nice rebound. There was some earnings in there with QCOM, AMD, and a few other ones sprinkled in throughout there. The banks are catching a bounce to the upside. The only real laggard was the treasuries and then just home builders. The XHB and ITB, home builders, anything home builders related, real estate related is looking vulnerable, looking heavy. Those were strong to the upside in 2020, 2021. Now they're seeing outflows as inflation is high. Consumers tend to back off their spending. The cost of goods go up, et cetera, as well as interest rates going up. So makes it harder to buy new homes. Another one that kind of stuck out that was interesting to me here, one I'm going to be keeping an eye on, is this Meta ETF, which has a lot of metaverse type names in it, in the ETF, changed their ticker symbol from Meta to METV. And the only reason I could think that would happen, and the reason Facebook has delayed their ticker change, is because of the pushback they got from their ticker originally. MTVR or whatever, MRTV or something, whatever it was supposed to be. I actually think that Facebook might have went in and bought it, the ticker Meta from Roundhill. And we'll see. Maybe that's what's going to happen, and that's why they've delayed it, so that they could have that actual ticker symbol Meta. So that's going to be interesting, something to keep an eye on. I haven't seen anybody else mention it, so I just thought I'd bring it up. But going back to the home builder sector, This is what I'm talking about. It continues to look really heavy, kind of an inside week. If this loses 69.30, I think we see some more heavy outflows, and names like DHI, BLDR, Len, even Home Depot and Lowe could see some unwind, some outflows as they rotate into other names. That money shifts. Maybe that money shifts into banks. You know, there's some good looking bank charts out there. Morgan Stanley is one of the best looking. Goldman Sachs, even JP Morgan doesn't look bad. And I'll jump into the index reviews and some chart reviews in a minute. I just wanted to get through some of the highlights. But here's the example. Here's Morgan Stanley, not only one of the best looking charts, but it's, to me, one of the best looking bank charts out there. Almost looks like it's ready to break out. So something else I wanted to bring up is, and why I'm kind of leaning bullish on the market, is this right here. Buybacks. Buybacks can turn back on next week. So we know some of these companies, they've announced it during earnings. Some of these companies have some really big buybacks. You think about Apple, Google, Facebook. I mean, they got billions and billions of dollars to do buybacks with. Some have increased their buybacks. You know, AVGO, you got some of these big semi names have big buyback money just waiting to get put to work. So could we see a little bit of a tech push? We could, just because of buybacks. And institutions know this. If they know that companies are buying back stock, you know, they could piggyback that momentum and help drive them higher if we can reclaim and hold to the upside. If not, and they use that opportunity to sell into the buybacks, well, then we'll talk about that at that time. But right now, as well as Bitcoin is breaking the downtrend that it's been on for a while. Every time it's tried to make a higher low, it's gotten rejected and just faded right back off. There's actually a little bit of a change in price action here. We've actually made in a little bit of a base. It's breaking the downtrend and actually starting to try to reclaim to the upside over 41K. So to me, that is notable, because to me, Bitcoin is kind of a pulse reader, in my opinion, for high growth appetite, risk appetite. If they're buying Bitcoin, institutions are buying Bitcoin, they could feel like they're going to put some money to work in the markets, right? Put some risk out there. And that could see some of the high growth, especially some of the really beat up names, could see a decent bounce. So as far as S&P futures, let's talk about last week. We got a bounce off the lows last week. We reclaimed the 200 to the upside. We came right into the bottom of the long-term channel, got rejected right on the tap, the retest, came back, retested the 200-day on Friday morning after that non-farm payroll and held. And we actually saw a nice midday grind to the upside, maybe even a little bit of a squeeze, but then coming into power hour after about the first 15-20 minutes, it was just straight selling into the close. So a little bit of a weaker close with some heavy selling, but we did hold the 200-day. We are now pinned between the 20-day and the 9-day. So it's kind of a decision week for the markets here. If we break the 200 to the downside, I think the markets, obviously, we're going to be in that elevator situation where we get one of these, where we kind of just stair step back down, maybe even aggressively, but we held. So as long as we back test and hold, and if we can get through Friday's high, I think we retest last week's high, we retest this channel, which would also put us right around the 50-day, right at 46.12. And if we can reclaim that to the upside, then we'll obviously see a little bit of follow through in the market. Some of that, again, could be buyback related. I would expect some rejection right at the 50, but I'm not thinking the market is going to go to new all-time highs here. So we'll take it day by day, week by week. Buybacks can have a big influence. So we'll see. Earnings have not been that bad as far as tech goes, other than, say, Facebook. As far as the NASDAQ, much different picture. The NASDAQ is looking much weaker. It didn't even have a full day over the 200-day. Then we were back below it in after hours. Made a lower high on Friday, but we did hold kind of a back test of support right around that 14,400 level. So the fact we held that, we are in a downtrend. We're still below short-term EMAs, below the 200-day, the 50 days curling down. It's not a pretty picture. So, but if we can if we go through Thursday's highs and we retest the 200-day, maybe we can build something over the 200-day for more of a short-term bounce. Maybe for a week, maybe for 2 weeks, who knows, right? Just take it day by day, week by week. I don't think we can call it a bottom. I don't think that the bottom is in if inflation is high. And keep in mind that the next Fed meeting is in March and the Fed hasn't even done anything yet. We'll see what happens to the market once they actually do start raising rates. So something to keep an eye on is the VIX. If the VIX starts spiking back over 25, I'd be more bearish. I'd be leaning more for a pullback or downside. If we break below 21, then I'm going to be leaning bullish for more upside continuation push. And to me, if we get that push, it's going to come from the mega caps. It's going to come from something like Apple, which is right back into the 50-day. Like I said, they start these buybacks. These buybacks kick in across the board, especially in tech. And tech is the heaviest weight on the market. It will just naturally just carry the market higher on its back if we can see any kind of continuation. We'll see if Amazon reclaims after their earnings, if they can continue to grind to the upside. Google came back into the 50-day and held. We'll see if this can, now that it's filled some of this earning gap and held the 50-day, if this wants to make another leg up, if they start their buyback. Same with Microsoft, Facebook. This could dead cat bounce if they start their buyback as well. If a good example, this would be something like Netflix, where you get a couple days of drawdown selling and then you start to make the dead cat bounce. And this is kind of exactly what I expect from Facebook too. If we get 3-4 days to the upside, I'd watch for that failed follow through and then let it pull back a little bit. It's not going to be just a straight shot back up to where it was. But it could catch some nice bounce. It could catch some nice range. So keep that one on watch. I think another one to keep on watch is going to be Tesla. It basically had a sideways week. It really hasn't gone anywhere. So if this breaks out of the weekly range to the upside over the 940s, this may see a little bit more bounce back towards this downtrend, which would also line up around the 50, maybe get rejected there. If it breaks Friday's lows in that weekly channel to the downside, then I'd look for a retest to the 200-day. But a couple names that I'm going to be watching. One is going to be AMD. I think AMD is one of the better looking semis, just going through all the semi names. It had good earnings, good guidance, gapped up, pulled back a little bit, held the 9 EMA, and then a nice kind of bounce update on Friday. So if we can break over Thursday, Friday highs on AMD, I think we see more continuation to the upside, more upside push. So that's a name I'm going to be watching to the long side, as well as those two banks. Morgan Stanley is one I would watch for a long. Goldman Sachs still has room back towards the 50-day and 200-day. Even JP Morgan could bounce back towards the 50-day if we see continuation in the bank names. As far as some high growth names I'm going to be watching this week to see if we do get that kind of risk on appetite. One is going to be AFRM. This has earnings this week. See if this can grind and retest that 68 to the upside. If so, I think it starts pushing towards 79 before earnings. Facebook, I mentioned, that's going to be on bounce watch. Piton, this is already up after hours Friday, up to like 31, I believe. Who knows? I mean, this thing could have a monster day on Monday. Let them sell it at the open a little bit on the gap up. Let it pull back, kind of curl around, see if it just rips to the upside. So that one I'm going to be watching for any kind of dips for entry. ZS is another name I have on radar. This one closed back over the 200-day on Friday. If we do see, again, like I said, some more buybacks or risk on for this week, and this gets over 266, I think this makes a push towards that 50-day, towards 287. So that could have some room to the upside. Another one to keep an eye on is going to be Shop. In my opinion, right now it's below the 9, but it's trying to set in a base multiple times, holding this around this 800 level. So if this gets over that 9 EMA, and starts to get back in the 940 area, this could make a bounce as well if we see these high growth names that really got hammered. And what there's going to be some other cues I'm looking at. So, if names like Dachshund and UPST and Team and some even CRWD doesn't look bad. I have an alert set on this one. D-Dog has earnings this week, so I'm actually watching this one. The reason why is the RSI is making a higher low, and it's kind of flagging here on the daily. It is below the 20-day, so if it gets over the 9 and the 20 and starts to push to the upside, who's to say this doesn't make a decent bounce into D-Dog's earnings, room to 195, and then we'll see what happens. So that's more of a side watch. It's not a main focus. And then on the downside, I'm watching these home builders. If Home Depot fails to hold green early tomorrow, this one I think winds back into the 20-day. Same with Lowe's. DHI, this thing looks heavy. If this closed on the lows on Friday, if this fails to hold green and has more downside, this could unwind. Len could see more downside. All these names, in my opinion, are short watches, short opportunities. And again, we could see money rotate out of this and go into other names. These names have been on a big run since the lows of 2020. Money could flow out of these and go into other names, go into other areas. So even if it's short term, but those are some names I'm watching. NVIDIA does have earnings coming up. So if AMD bounces, NVIDIA may see some follow through. Keep an eye on the semis. There's some other names not looking as good post earnings, but that is definitely one I would keep an eye on. Keep an eye on the VIX, keep an eye on the large caps, and then we see what happens. But there are some high growth names, in my opinion, that are kind of, they're setting up. They're not there. They need to confirm to the upside. They need to get over their last week's highs to see continuation. But they are something I'm watching, because if those high growth names go, the NASDAQ is going to catch a decent bounce. We could see some tech bounce in general. So that's kind of something I'm watching. If not, and they just roll these back over, they lose their Friday lows, then it's still risk off in the high growth names. But it does not mean we can't see a bounce, or that you could see some sort of continued little relief rally in some of these names. So keep an open mind. Be open to whatever the price action is telling us. Look for your cues. Look for the names that are leading. Look for the names that are lagging. What sectors do those belong to? And then just focus on that relative strength, either up or down. So to me, home builders is one I'm watching for strength to the downside. And then some of these growth names, because of Bitcoin, I'm kind of watching some of these. Coin was a great long on Friday, had a really nice grinding day to the upside, showed some nice strength. And even watching Unity, if this can get over Friday's highs, reclaim that 20-day post earnings, this could make a nice push back towards that 200-day. So again, there are some sectors, some names I'm looking at, both on the long and the downside. So hope you have a great week. Hope the video helps. Prepare, and if you have any questions, comments, please leave them in the description or in the comment section. Otherwise, I will see you guys on Twitter. Have a great week.